According to a 2018 article by the Nature Conservancy, the Wabash River is nearly 500 miles long and spans most of Indiana. The Wabash and its connected rivers and streams provide drinking water to 72% of Indiana's counties. The pollution and degradation of this water source could lead to major health issues in Indiana residents and many negative effects to our environment. We, as students of Purdue University and residents of Indiana, believe that the pollution of the Wabash River is a major issue that needs to be addressed more seriously for the wellness of not only the people and native species that live in Indiana around the Wabash River. The pollution of the Wabash River, caused by poor farming practices and poor regulation of clean water, can have drastic effects on our health and our environment. And it's our duty to find sustainable solutions so that the pollution of the Wabash River and other bodies of water can be resolved and prevented in the future. My name is Caitlin, and today I will be talking about previous efforts to restore the Wabash River in the Lafayette area. Next, Hannah will talk about the effects of field drainage on the Wabash River. Ari will then talk about the problem of E. coli and how it gets into the Wabash River, and Jenna will finish up with what we can do to restore the Wabash River and bring back its original beauty. According to a 2014 article by Environmental Change Initiative, the Upper Wabash River Basin Commission began monitoring the water quality in 2009 in the Wabash River upstream from Wells, Adams, and Jay counties. They had worked with landowners through 2012 to encourage installation of grassy filter strips and border around fields and ditches to reduce the runoff of sediment and nutrients into the river after rain and snow melts. In a 2017 article on Lafayette's official website, it states that since the fall of 2009, volunteers have come together to complete a snapshot assessment of water quality throughout the Wabash River. And in the spring of 2011, efforts were expanded to include sample sites within the Wildcat Creek watershed, where teams of volunteers, like shown above, would then monitor temperature, water cloudiness, nutrient levels, and pathogen concentrations. In 2016, the city of Lafayette kicked off a year-long #WaterWisdom campaign aimed at educating the public about the Wabash River. However, many more efforts to actually solve the water pollution of the Wabash River still need to be made. And now Tana is going to talk about how no-till planting is the best method for farmers to use to prevent the pollution from fertilizers and pesticides in the Wabash River.
No-till planting is an agricultural technique of growing crops or pasture without disturbing the soil. This increases the amount of water infiltrated back into the soil. This is a good technique to use because it creates less pollution. This is true because you use less machinery, therefore less gas is being used. When using less gas, you also save money. There is additionally a higher crop yield. Using this method is a great way to prevent chemicals and other herbicides getting into the rivers and streams from field runoff. An additional way to prevent this is installing water control structures. Without these structures, water drains off fields along with the chemicals like dissolved phosphorus and nitrates that drain off and get into the rivers. A water-controlled structure holds back water like a dam and helps the water and chemicals used on the crops to have a longer time to be absorbed. Stop longs are placed in the structure so farmers can potentially take these out if the soil gets too wet. You can also use the machines to control groundwater levels on crops. This helps the crops in as well because they are able to absorb more of the nutrients and have more access to water. Next, Ari is going to talk about E. coli problems.
Alright, I'll be talking about the E. coli problem in the Wabash River. E. coli is one of two preferred indicator bacteria used by the United States Environmental Protection Agency to determine if the water is suitable for recreational use. Many water quality tests have been conducted on the Wabash, but according to a 2019 study conducted by Notre Dame, out of 46 sites on the Wabash River tested for E. coli concentration, 43 of those sites had a level higher than that of the Indiana State Water Quality Standard of 125 colonies per 100 milliliters. In addition, according to a 2015 article published in the News Sentinel, most of the Wabash River is listed as impaired for excessive amounts of E. coli bacteria, which mainly come from human or animal feces. Now, the problem of E. coli in the Wabash River stems from two major sources: septic system overflow and increased livestock operation. Septic systems are common in places without a sewer system, where all the homes in the area pump their waste into a septic tank, where it then separates into solid and liquids. Septic tanks need regular maintenance, and if that is not achieved, some of the waste can seep out into the soil and then run off into the streams, polluting the Wabash River with E. coli. In addition, before 1980, homeowners in the upper Wabash area connect their septic system overflows directly to a county ditch or stream, thereby directly polluting the Wabash with E. coli. And many of these septic systems continue to send overflow into the local waterways even today. The second is increased livestock operation. It should come to no surprise that over the last 2 decades, that in order to meet food demands across the country, many Indiana farms had to increase the amount of livestock that they're conducting. The increase in amount of livestock has the additional side effect of having more manure and animal feces to deal with, which, if they're not managed properly, a lot will end up in the Wabash River. However, there are potential solutions to these problems. One is manure management and collection. We need to find a better way to collect, store, and handle manure to ensure that it doesn't end up polluting the river with E. coli. Second is public education / septic management. Programs for septic management can provide a systematic approach to reduce septic system pollution. Education on the matter could definitely help alleviate some sources of pathogens. And lastly are drift fences. These are short fences that can be installed to direct livestock movement. So the drift fence would run parallel to the stream to keep animals out of it, which will limit the amount of animal feces in the river, thereby reducing the amount of E. coli in the Wabash. Next up, Jen is going to talk about what the public can do about cleaning up the Wabash.
Water is a huge part of our daily lives. Living without water is physically impossible. According to a Healthline article in 2019, you can only survive without water for days, but you may be susceptible to the effects of dehydration even sooner than that. There was a Federal Water Pollution Control Act passed in 1948. In the image to the right, you can see just how murky the waterways were before the act was created. In 1972, amendments were made, and this helped the act gain the name of the Clean Water Act. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, published in 2020, the amendments were regulating pollutants that were able to be put into the water, the implementation of pollution control problems, setting water quality standards for contaminants in surface waters. And without a permit, a person could not put a pollutant into waters that could be sailed on. And then they also funded the construction of the sewage treatment plants. And lastly, the act recognized the need for planning to address the critical problems that pollution could possibly cause. There are many ways a single person can protect our waterways around them, according to waterpollution.org in a 2010 article. A great way to do this is to conserve water and decrease shortages by turning off the tap when it's not being used. Also, don't overuse pesticides and fertilizers, and make sure if you are going to use them that there are plants in the gardens that you are going to use them in. This prevents the contaminated water from running off into the local water sources around you. You can also reduce and clean up any litter you see, especially near our water sources. This reduces physical pollution and prevents places like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Another really easy way to reduce water pollution is to just follow the laws that are set by your local government to reduce the pollution in many various forms. There are still more simple pollution reducing actions that only take simple changing habits. A 2008 article on the Simsbury, Connecticut government website gave these tips. Don't pour liquid, fat, or oil down the sink. Instead, keep a fat jar under your sink that allows the fat to cool and be disposed of as a solid. The image on the right is an example of a fat jar. Also, don't flush medical waste down the toilet. This pollutes our waterways and does not help the species that live there. And also, don't put household chemicals down the sink or toilet. Communities like Simsbury, Connecticut have hazardous waste collection day to properly dispose of these agents. Another great way to reduce water usage is to put a brick or a half-gallon container in the toilet tank in order to reduce the amount of water per flush. You could also install a water-efficient toilet. A really easy way is to use a compost pile instead of using your garbage disposal. This keeps unwanted items from being put down into our pipes. And then double check that your sump pump does not drain into the sanitary sewer system. Simsbury, Connecticut recommends calling local pollution authorities if there are any questions. For non-Simsbury residents, contacting your local government system to find out where the best discharge point is in order to reduce pollution. The Wabash River is the second longest river in Indiana, second only to the Ohio River, that makes the southern border of the state. It travels by many cities before it joins the Ohio River. It is home to many different aquatic species and is part of the ecosystem for many other animals. Polluting the river not only harms those animals, but harms the health of the humans living around it. It takes many chemicals to purify the water enough to be considered drinkable, yet we continue to deposit thousands of pollutants and toxins into the Wabash. Unfortunately, the Wabash is not the only waterway that is facing this problem. In order to clean up our waters, change is needed. Reducing the amount of pollution is as easy as every person changing 3 different habits. If every person in this room turned off the tap while not using it, we would save gallons upon gallons of water. If every person threw away their trash instead of littering, used the correct amount of pesticides and fertilizers, or created a compost pile, a portion of our community would become that much cleaner. There would be less of our planet that has been polluted. Change is needed, and it starts with you.